Hi, everybody. This is Agni, and I'm back with another session of Breach Ready Dialogues. And today I have with me Heath Mullins, and he's been someone who I've talked to when he was in Forrester. We had a great time then, and I'm looking forward to a great time today. But let me not steal his thunder. Let me introduce Heath. Heath, why don't you talk about a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, and where you are, what's going on?
Okay, well, that's an awful lot. And happy day, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Heath Mullins. I am a former and recovering Forrester analyst. Currently, I am at ExtraHop as the Chief Evangelist. Now, what that really means is that I'm continuing the good work of the kind of in the analyst vein, and that I'm talking about the big problems. I'm still having the conversations with the executives, and what's really bothering people, what's keeping them up at night. Additionally, I happen to be working for the leader in the NDR nav space with ExtraHop. So what we do essentially is it's a combination of network performance management as well as NDR nav technology. So not only can I tell you where your network slowdown is, but I can also tell you what the problem is from a security standpoint. I can do deep dive forensics. I can decrypt everything that you're looking at, and I can provide you with a complete picture of what's actually happening on your network as compared to just, we think something's wrong here, we think something's wrong there. And a really interesting tidbit, and one of the reasons why I kind of came over here was, ExtraHop was born in the network, right? They were an NPM solution, think NetFlow analysis tools. So what that allows us to do that's really different is we can look at IOCs in kind of a different fashion. So if you're a standard NDR, you're just kind of looking at the network, right? And you're saying, oh, I see some lateral movement. I see something that maybe shouldn't be happening. Whereas we could see an IOC that may not be reported as a CV or something else, something like spinning up a new instance in a virtual space, a new memory allocation, new CPU utilization, because we're still looking at the traditional network information. It also allows for collapsing the stack. So this tool can be used by the NOC and the SOC, and set RBAC, and here's your controls. This is where the NOC guys see. This is what the SOC guys see. Extremely powerful, especially when you're talking about bringing everything together and reducing your overall tool sprawl across the environment. That's my quick pitch, because it's his pitch after all. So please, Agni, let's get into this. I think we're going to talk about some really fun stuff today.
Yes, and as is usual, the first question that I have for you is give us a little background with breaches and what's been your take on it. How how are breaches? How have you been experiencing breaches during your Forrester days and now, and how they're different? And then maybe we spend some time in the end. I'll ask you again if it needs be, but we should spend some time talking about current breaches and what do they mean to the world.
Yeah. So the breaches have been really interesting. Some things stay the same, some things change over time, right? So you think of the traditional breach, we're out there looking for a CV, an unpatched system, something that's public facing or perhaps just internal, whether it's the internal employee stealing information or somebody that got handed a packet of money to provide a password, or piggybacking. It's all kind of what I consider bread and butter of the breach industry, which is, let's get in, we want to get in fast, and we want to get out fast, and then leave our ransom, leave our demands, whatever they may be. I think it's become a little more political in the past couple of years. The types of entities that are being targeted, it's not necessarily I'm just going after you for money now. Now it's, I don't agree with your ideas, so I'm going to go take down your site, or I'm going to interfere with your ability to perform your duties, whatever those duties may be. It could be metropolitan, police departments, fire, critical infrastructure, which has been a big deal, as you well know. This keeps on popping up. Well, we'll talk about that in the recent one, but please go ahead, Agni.
No, I sorry I interrupted, but I was actually trying to add to what you were saying. I read
Oh
about
yeah, please.
the water systems that got attacked some
hmm
time ago, last year, I guess. And the total population that water system was serving was over 15,000 people. Uh,
Yeah.
that's really nothing.
Yeah, to me, that's a dry run. No pun intended,
Yeah,
because
I
it's a water
understand.
system. Yeah.
But still, yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
you're
No,
right because you were saying that people are no longer. I mean, people are intending to shut down systems because they just don't agree with what you do and how you do.
yeah, and how much of this is just for fun? It's not just script kiddies sitting in the basement now, that are just trying stuff out that they pulled off the dark web or Reddit or something like that. These are, semi-cohesive groups with a similar interest, and these groups fluctuate. People come in, people go, and today's target may not be tomorrow's target, but the target from 3 years ago they may want to revisit, because everybody knows how slowly the response typically is, especially when dealing with like civic systems, government systems. They're a very attractive target because there's a good chance that the remediation probably didn't catch that little perfect little nugget that you left sitting in that network somewhere that's just dormant. It's not doing anything, it's just sitting and waiting. Excuse me. And then it pops up again, and you're like, well, we thought we got rid of this, but now you're going back through the same cycle again, because you may have patched external facing systems because that was perhaps the ingress point. But you may not have had the funds or the wherewithal or the knowledge to completely patch the internal systems as well.
In fact, you made a very good point. This is something that I talk to many people usually that, if you look at the MITRE layout, I divided the MITRE layout into four parts. All the 14 tactics, I divide them into four parts. The first two are happening outside your enterprise, right? Recon and resource augmentation. It's initial access when you really come to know something's happening. And then it goes all the way up to privilege escalation. And if you see really, that's where the entire cybersecurity market is sitting, because you want to stop the next attack, right? So, but the problem is, it's the third part. It is after discovery, finally people get to a stage where they're able to get into lateral movement. And they would do that sometimes by using credentials or misusing credentials, sometimes not. But what you just said made sense to me, because if someone manages to cross the initial defenses, then the only way you can do that is by interrupting that attack in some way or the other. And as you said earlier, I'm connecting to the work that you're doing at ExtraHop, and you said that you're able to figure out anomalies in how people are spinning up an extra VM, or they're using a part of memory that shouldn't have been used. That's essential information about how to stop that guy from going from initial access all the way till reaching lateral movement.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yo, yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'm gonna discuss that you brought up several times through that statement was, we're talking. People tend to get hung up in the idea and the concept that the attack is coming from a person, right? I
Yes.
prefer to think of them as entities, because as we have seen, you can weaponize bots. You can weaponize bots internal to your network that already have that. So we're not just talking about privilege escalation among actual human beings. This
Yes.
is me taking over BigFix. This is me injecting a new piece of code. This is me using PowerShell, which may be allowed within the network. This is me doing a lot of things within your network that are not, it doesn't look like a human, it looks like a standard practice. We run into this all the time in OT environments, where it looks like this is this is what it looks like. It's always this square, right? And if you're not looking at that information, if you're not looking at that traffic, then you don't know that this square may now contain encrypted information in it. This square may have gone from its 16 bytes every 30 seconds to now it's 36K every 5 seconds. That's an anomaly. That should be looked at 100%.
Agreed.
My, yeah, my favorite, I'm not going to say my favorite, but something that I quite often catch people up in is when they discuss air-gapped environments with relation to lateral movement, right? And they say, oh, no, we're a secure facility. We're air-gapped. And I say, okay, Where's your terminal that controls those systems inside that air-gapped environment? Is it inside that cage? Is it behind that door? Oh no, the terminal's right here on the SOC, and then we feed it into the SIM, and that's up there on the screen. I said, okay, so you don't have an air-gapped environment. You have a method for an attacker to get into an unsecured OT environment, and the only security seems to be this console or this server that you're using to communicate back and forth, which may inherently be unprotected because people don't think about OT like that. They
Yeah,
don't think about it. Yeah.
yeah. In fact, you reminded me of when you talk about bots. What I heard very recently, in fact, I think this morning, is that bots are now being used as employees, fake bots.
Hmm.
So people hire a software encoder in some other part of the world, a software or a coder some part of the world, and they have never seen him. He's not come on an
Hmm.
interview, and all you did was get a bot, and all that the bot needs is access to your environment, and then it goes on and does something else, something malicious. But you're absolutely right. The future does look quite awesome when it comes to all these kind of technologies, and the work which I think you've been doing, and I think the work that even I'm contributing to, is to make sure that we try and figure this out faster than others. I think that's where the main kick lies. Look at
Yeah.
look at what happened at Qantas, MGM, JLR, Marks and Spencer. Your
Hmm.
take.
Oh yeah, Caesars too. Don't forget them.
Users too, yeah.
So yeah, so it's really interesting. We're starting to get into kind of like the current face of things. So traditionally, when you're a hacker, an exploiter, or whatever you want to call yourself, traditionally you would do things around social engineering. You're going to sit at the airport bar. You're going to go to the hotels where there's conferences where people frequent. You're going to shoulder surf. You're going to do all the normal things, right? And people tend to forget that these are still very extremely effective. I mean, beyond just walking by you and scanning your phone to try and get payment information from near contact devices and stuff like that, we're also talking about, hey, I'm sitting here, I'm surfing InstaFace or Faceagram or whatever your social media of choice is. I'm getting an idea just by looking over your shoulder. Well, who's this person that he's writing to or she's writing to, and then I'm going to go add them as a friend, and then I can create my network around them. So it's not, these are, I mean, they're pretty basic tactics. It's almost like when you start a rumor at one end of the room and you say it at the other end of the room and it's a completely different story. You can learn an awful lot from somebody 5 minutes sitting in a bar, 5 minutes looking over their shoulder while you're pretending to be on your phone. You're actually recording what they're doing. You can get a lot of information that can help you push forward this breach, push forward this password reset. And a lot of the ones that you pointed out where they used vishing and smishing, and they created this whole hey, I'm going to go password reset down to the mannerisms that were used by that person when they were requesting or demanding, in one case, that their password be reset. And that's just incredible to me. This video right here could be used by an attacker to imitate us and emulate us very
Absolutely.
easily and just push it right on through. So it's easy to forget social engineering when you become so focused on the technology. So the current breaches where they're not only landing and expanding, they're also getting in and doing things. They're not necessarily doing them very rapidly. They may be kind of slow rolling. If I know, for instance, because I shoulder surfed you, I know where you work, I found you on LinkedIn, I know who your friends are, I know the things that you're talking about where you are, I can very easily pretend to be you because I know you're going to be out of the office for a week. So I have a week to go in there, get my password credential reset because I scanned your SIM or I have an eSIM or something like that. I can do the multi-factor authentication. I can do all these things now. Now I'm you. And for a week, I don't go in there and just grab stuff. I go in and see what I can touch. And then I see, okay, of the things that I can touch, what can I do with it? Because I've targeted you specifically for a reason. You have something I want. So what else can I touch? What else can I do? I may upload an innocuous file, something from iCard, just to see if it's going to be flagged going up there. And I may use bits and pieces of different things to reassemble them on the other side once I'm already across your barriers. Much like you bypass a firewall, you take it in segments, you send it out of order. I can do this across multiple emails. I can do all kinds of stuff. So don't forget that your people are still your weakest point. And I don't mean that in a condescending way or a your people are terrible, because they're all highly skilled individuals. There's a reason why you hired them. But even the best people can be fooled by modern technology when combined with the right things that should be said to that person that they already know.
In fact, good that you said this. Mm,
Is it?
the- and I was thinking, as you were saying, this whole HITL thing in AI, right? You have human in the middle, right? Human in the
Hmm.
loop, as they say, not in the middle. Human, HITM, HITL, I don't know what jargon they use, but they want a human in the loop so that a decision can be taken which is not autonomous, but is taken based on the context. The point that I was thinking about at that place is a friend of mine. He told me that their help desk they've implemented a new procedure which is based on a captcha. So if somebody wants to get something done and they pressurize, and this happened right after the Qantas attack because they got scared, and they
Hmm.
had access to someone who came up with this idea of captcha that when they go through the workflow uh, to reset someone's password, to fill up that they need to have a captcha, and
Hmm.
and this guy is continuously telling them that don't want a captcha, don't want a captcha, and so on and so forth, and that triggered a whole lot of concern in somebody's mind. But uh, to your point, the human is the smartest in the loop and yet
Hmm.
the weakest of the loop as well, because there are certain cognitive tendencies which are not there in a machine, uh, that exist in a human, which are weaknesses. But then there are weaknesses in a machine as well, which is the ability to be predictive. So,
Hmm.
so to your point, I think the future would make a difference between. I mean, people would start defining. I'm saying those who are diligent enough to define a future with parts where you have humans and you take advantage of the value of the human, and parts where there are machines or AI or whatever you call it, where you take advantage of the benefit of that and do away with the negatives of both. But then there could also be the other situation where you are so predictive that the attacker knows what the AI is going to do, and the
Hmm.
human is so vulnerable that the attacker knows exactly how to pressurize them. Uh, that's entirely possible. But to me, the way I see it now, um, everything balances on the point that we started discussing on becoming ready for the next breach. Because at the end of the day, as an employee or as a leader of technology and risk, organizations need to come up, or with be the CEO or the board, they need to be able to convince their stakeholders that they will be sufficiently immune to the next breach. The, the good news is I'm seeing conversations, and I'm sure you're seeing that too, is that people are now saying that breaches are inevitable, which was not the
Hmm.
case about 6, 7 years ago. They would say, "Why do we have a breach at all? I mean, we hired you, the CISO, to stop the breach, but you're not able to stop the breach." But now I hear conversations in boardrooms where they're saying, "Yeah, breaches are inevitable. Let's see how we can minimize that." What are you hearing?
Yeah. Oh, that the same thing. I mean, the assumed breach used to be just associated with defense in depth if you're our age, or zero trust if you're, coming up these days. You should assume breach. You should assume that the bad guys are already there, so you work on protecting your assets. And it's really interesting as we were, kind of discussing this whole human in the loop concept and stuff like that. It's at the end of the day, it breaks down to sociology. You can tell if you're in a situation or in a position where you feel you may be speaking to a bot, regardless of how normal it is or human it is, your organization and I wear my, as me, I wear my tinfoil hat pretty tightly. But there should be, I mean, I don't want to say challenge questions, but in today's remote workforce, your IT department may receive a call from somebody they've never met in the flesh. This is something that is just inherent to the new world of business. You may have never seen this person, known this person, but there's somebody that does. And if you get something that's like, this is a high value target, we used to target the CEOs, right? I say we, just that's not a Freudian slip, I promise. But CEOs and C levels used to be targeted all the time because they had access to everything. Well, we learned that you don't want them to have access to everything because they may not be up to date on security because they want to be able to do what they want when they travel. And there's different policies, for thee than for me, right? So, and which is kind of a snotty way to put it, but you get the concept that I'm working with here. Now they're targeting admins. They're targeting, it may be HR, it may be payroll, it may not be your traditional target, as in I'm a knock analyst, I'm a SOC analyst, I'm the person setting policy. It may not even be them because they may have a very specific reason for targeting your very specific organization. This could be a paid attack by somebody who's going through a divorce. I want you to go ruin their career. Vindiction. I mean, human nature is horrible. People are terrible. Um, but yeah, so I kind of lost my train of thought
No
on my
worries, no worries.
tangent
I
there.
think let me bring you
Yeah.
back on I think you pointed out a lot of areas that come up, but I think I'm going to go back to the whole design of being resilient and
Yes.
and thinking from grounds up, from a foundational level. If you are able to, I know we discussed this, if you are able to, you know, design microsegments in a manner that you do it rightly, and you do it by adequate knowledge of how attackers could attack, and you build playbooks for the SOC and the NOC, then use, reduce the amount of noise that comes in so that the attack paths become narrower, then what you really end up doing is, if there is a cyber attack, and if it comes through a supplier or it comes through the help desk, if you've got separate zones for them, it's difficult to navigate the enterprise then, isn't it? And that means eventually what you are going to end up with is a mechanism by which you're able to contain the attack in a part of the organization, and therefore the rest of the organization is continuing to work, being unaffected. Do you think that sort of, I mean, you presented a lot of threats. And I think almost all those threats we can do two things about it. We can have an allowed path that is so narrow that only the right guys can travel. And if someone who's not the right guy, he has to misuse a credential to get in, and then he has to behave abnormally, which I think some of the things that you talked about earlier about ExtraHop can detect and find out that this is abnormal behavior, and then that person could be trapped in a particular area and be contained.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a million things to say about this. Imagine that, pure shock on your face. I can tell from here. So adequate knowledge. So microsegmentation. If you're well versed in zero trust, and even if you're not, microsegmentation. The core of it is really just that it takes the default deny, but then makes exceptions and allowances, right? So it really just lets the correct person get to the correct resource and get all the way granular down to the session data. Now, on paper, it sounds amazing. The reality is it is extremely difficult to deploy without a tool like color tokens. Shocker. But what it really gets down to is where it gets really hard, and this, you're going to tie this kind of into playbooks and stuff. So where it really gets hard is when you start to automate some of these processes, when you're in default deny, or you're doing network mapping, or you're trying to find out what these dependencies are as you're implementing microsegmentation. You may have services that, that secondary, tertiary library of commands or controls doesn't get kicked off unless very specific things are checked within the application. So if you go in and you're just, you don't have a tool like color tokens, or anybody else in the space, you don't have something like that, well, you're going to start to define policies that are going to block the routes that you see currently, right? This is what's coming in and this is what's going out. What you're not going to know until somebody that has a specialized function or a different requirement that may not be kicked off, but every, even let's just say every 15 minutes, because you're looking at a window, right? You're just looking at a section of time to make this determination traditionally. You're going to start breaking things. You're going to get complaints both
Exactly.
internally and externally from customers. They're going to say, well, this doesn't work now. What is the problem? And you end up burdening your IT department, your internal help desk. And that's a problem for everybody because they're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to get complaints. And as the CISO, as the NOC director, the SOC director, you're going to have people breathing down your neck going, why did you just break literally everything on the network, and you're gonna say, I was employing policy as directed. And where that becomes, and how I'm kind of tying that into the playbooks is you have to be really careful with playbooks. Playbooks and automation are fantastic. They can make simple, repetitive tasks very easy. Onboarding, offboarding, putting a tail on somebody that we know they've been given their 2 weeks notice, or we're about to let them go on Friday. In case they get wind of it, we're going to trail their network behavior and see what they do and what they access, and maybe restrict access to some things. Applying just-in-time access, applying policies like that, that's fine too. But don't shut down entire network segments, especially if you haven't microsegmented. Don't
Absolutely.
reboot the router in the middle of the afternoon because a new CVE came in. I mean, this is the human in the loop stuff right here, right?
Yes. Yes.
This is table stakes. Good Lord, do not let people do this stuff, right? Um, so as we're kind of going through that, narrowing that path and just in time deny by default, this is a good time to talk about third party risk as well. As we just saw with a major, I guess I can say it, it's a public news, F5 got their source code stolen of all things, and that was through an attack. Somebody got in there, they used something. We don't have all the details yet of what happened, but it's probably pretty easy to assume that somebody got in using one of these methods that we've talked about today, social engineering, something along those lines. They got in, they got the source code, and now everybody out there with an F5 big IP should be going, holy crap, what do we do? This is such a massive problem, and how do you actually resolve this? Geez, that's literally a load balancer. All your traffic goes across it. And do you switch to your HA? Because you probably got an HA if you've got a load balancer. It's the same thing, So how are we going to decide what to move? That is a very messy problem that I'm not getting into because I don't even want to think about it. That sounds like somebody else's problem to me.
But you make a fair point, and I think that goes back to the OT experience that you were talking about as well. One of the traditional methods of handling these situations is the F5 kind of a situation is called as fail-safe, which means that think about it like you're walking into the subway and suddenly there's a power failure. What do? You open the gates.
Yep.
Right? That continues to be a mechanism, especially in the OT environment, where
if fail open instead of fail closed.
Instead of all close, people are just going to remove the firewall from the network. The firewall is not working. They're going to everybody's going to get connected now. So that used to be a fail-safe mechanism. But in today's world, you can do neither. You can't fail block, you can't fail open. Because both of them are dangerous. Just like you said, don't automate everything because you might be ending up with somebody shutting down a router suddenly in the middle of the day. Unless you have really done the analysis and done a very clear diligence of what needs to be done. But at the same time, fail open is also a problem because that's what your attacker wants you to do. They just want to trigger the emergency. And we've seen this in movies as well, right?
Oh yeah,
Trigger an emergency, and that's when the attacker, the thief, walks in. In fact, you remind me of Louvre just now. The theft of, all that. Anyways, coming back to our discussion. So I think what you're saying is making complete sense to me. And I think it's essential that today's world, we need to think about planning for that day. I mean, we've invested in cybersecurity, let's face it. There's enough investment in cybersecurity, and investments are going up. So are attacks. So I think, it is time that we start looking back and thinking about, shall we focus on the investments needed to stop the next attack? I mean, we've got cybersecurity, we've got IT, we're making new digital processes, we've got security awareness, which doesn't work at sometimes, or rather many times, right? And then, this is the cybersecurity awareness week, and someone asked me, what do you think? I said, look, this week is supposed to celebrate cybersecurity awareness, not do the cybersecurity awareness. You should be doing cybersecurity awareness throughout the year.
Every day,
in this month. Anyways, coming back to my point, I think, it's a pleasure talking to you. And I'm happy to meet you once again. We maybe
Absolutely.
sort of we talked a lot. And we had fun, I think.
Yep.
But what I would really want to conclude with is that, and I think you said that in as many words as well, is that it is, I think, time that people should think about sitting down and planning to figure out which of their investments are going to stop the next attack. Whether they do it foundationally using whatever tools like ExtraHop or color tokens or whatever. But it is time to sit down and figure out, do they have the right blocks, the right places so that they can stop and prevent the next attack? And have they combined that with operational processes? Because it's not only technology. People make the mistake, oh, I bought CrowdStrike, so I think I'm good. That doesn't work anymore. You need to couple it with operational processes that are going to leverage the power of CrowdStrike to stop the next attack. That are going to leverage the power of ExtraHop. I mean, somebody can buy a box and keep it in the network. If that's not doing what it's supposed to do, then same is with any other tool that you buy. You need to have operational processes around that. And that's what I wanted to say in the end, that it's important that CISOs and decision makers think about building breach readiness as a program throughout their organization. I mean, we are in the breach ready dialogues. That's what we are doing.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, is my main takeaway.
Yeah.
Ending words.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that is you made some excellent points in that summation. GRC used to be a bad word. GRC used to be associated with I'm getting ready for my cyber insurance policy. Let me do my self-attestation. By the way, no more checkbox exercises for cybersecurity policies, everybody. You have to prove it now. So when you're thinking in terms of breach readiness and, you know, what's our business continuity plan, what's our recovery plans and stuff, if you're not applying sound GRC, and that's governance, risk, and compliance for anybody that doesn't know that acronym, you should be discussing this on a daily level at the executive level. What are we doing? What are we required to do for via governance and compliance? And what risk is associated with that? As you were talking about, you know, cybersecurity is no longer just the SOC. Cybersecurity includes things like dev. If you're still doing agile, you should be shifting left and going to DevSecOps. I mean, there's so many places where you can put security into everyday environments and everyday workflows, because if you don't have security as an organization, if everybody's not sold and bought in, then you're going to fail as an organization.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heath. That was great talking. And as I said, maybe we'll come back and talk again. I love
maybe.